So just before you get started, you're all very welcome to this small practice information session, and I'm joined here with Liam Barrett. Liam, you're very welcome, and he's from the regulation department, and he assists in the regulatory requirements of setting up a practice. So you're very welcome, Liam, and it's just gone 1 o'clock, so we'll get started. So you're all very welcome to this small practice information session. Welcome to Liam Barrett from the regulation department, and he's going to talk to us about the regulatory requirements in setting up. So over to you, Liam. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, and thank you to everybody who has joined us. As Justin said, I am a solicitor with the Regulation Department of the Law Society with responsibility specifically for firms. In terms of firms, that means commencing a firm in this jurisdiction, ceasing a firm in this jurisdiction. If you're changing structure, going from a partnership to a sole principal or vice versa, then it lies within my purview, and I'm responsible for those matters. So the reason being, we want the register and our records to correctly reflect what is the structures, what is in place out there. Are there sole principal practices? Are there partnership practices, etc.? This is a very specific recording, a very specific meeting, because we're just going to talk about commencing a firm. And if we just think about commencing a firm, and I'm trying to go to the next slide, and there it is. Commencing a firm.
Just before you get started, Liam, if anyone wants to ask a question, we'll take it at the chat. We'd like to maybe just keep them for the end, if possible. But if you have something very, very urgent, we'll take it now.
Okay. In terms of commencing a firm in this jurisdiction, what do you need to know? Well, I'm going to say from the Law Society's point of view, because that's all I'm speaking from. From the Law Society's point of view, we have an application process which requires you to submit to the Society a number of documents. Namely, we have a commencement in practice form which must be completed and signed by you. And if there's partners, all the partners must sign. We require confirmation of your professional indemnity cover. That professional indemnity cover for this firm, this new firm, is in place. And that when this firm commences, there'll be no question, but that PII cover is in place and available for this firm. Now, the proof of that is you cannot commence your firm before a date that is specified on your confirmation of cover. So what I mean is, if the broker has provided confirmation of cover from the 1st of April 2022 to the 1st or to the 31st of March 2023, and you want to commence, you say, you sent this in to me in the last in March. I'll still say to you, I can't do anything. I can't commence your firm until at the very earliest the 1st of April, because that's when your PII cover runs from. And finally, there's a copy of your letterhead, your firm's letterhead. That's what is what the public is seeing. And when I speak about this, it's actually very important, because a number of applications, and what we're talking about here is the application, a number of applications actually fail because I'm going back to them, or one of my colleagues is going back to them and saying, can you send me in a copy of your letterhead? Or more likely, your letterhead is incorrect. So we'll talk about that as part of this. Okay, so they're the three documents: the commencement in practice form, confirmation of your professional indemnity insurance cover, which you'll get from your broker and provide to the Society, and a copy of your firm's letterhead. People ask me frequently, can I send them in? I haven't got the PII cover yet, but I have completed the commencement form and the letterhead, and whatever variation. I always say, I can't do anything until I have all three. So wait until you have all three and send them in to me. You can send them in individually, but it gets annoying actually, because because you're going back and saying, what have I already got? If you get a completed application, then you can say, I can work on that today. I have everything. It's here. Okay. This is the commencement in practice form. This is an image of the first page. What is in the commencement practice form? It's actually very basic. This is just the first page, but if you go online, and Justin will talk about this as well, the resources that are available in the society, you can download the commencement and practice form. And as I say, it's very simple. What you're seeing there is the fax number, the name of the practice. What is the name of the practice? Incidentally, on that, I'm going to say something. There is rules. If you look in the regulations, there are rules about how you name your firm. So my name is Liam Barrett. This is my name. I can have a firm automatically called Liam Barrett. Just Liam Barrett, some people just use it, or Barrett and Company, or Barrett and Partners if I have partners, or Barrett and, legals. So there's variations. But if I said I want to be called Humpty Dumpty, or I want to be called, I'm just going to ABQ. That's it's like Prince. I'm just a symbol, really. In other words, you can't do that. You have to use the surname, or your surname, or your initials, or the partners' names. Now, of course, if you have a specific reason for using a name, you then have to go to the ROPC, and that is the Regulation of Practice Committee. You have to advise the ROPC that you wish to use whatever name it is, Stony Batter Law Services, and your name is Frank O'Sullivan. If you set out the reasons why you think that you should be allowed to use Stony Batter Legal Services as the name, you can submit to that to the ROPC, which meets usually once a month. It will consider it, and it will come back with an answer. It'll probably be no, but you can go down that route. But you have that right to submit if you're not using your surname or your full name in the firm name. That's just if you look at the regulations, and they are in the resources, you will see that there are restrictions on the firm name that you can use. Okay, that's the commencement. I spoke a lot about the confirmation of cover already. Basically, this is what you need to get PII cover in place. You cannot commence a firm in this jurisdiction if you do not have PII cover in place. It's that simple. You can complete all the forms that you want, but you cannot commence, and you will not be commenced. And if you did start providing legal services, you are in serious trouble. That's when the Law Society gets tough, and it can be very tough. And that is sent in from your broker directly, or you get a copy from the broker and send it on as part of the application, which is the preferable way to receive it. The letterhead I spoke about, if you look at SI number 178 of 1996, the Solicitors' Practice, Conduct and Disciplinary Regulations 1996, it actually, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but when you read it, you will actually see where it talks about, even if a practice is carried on under the true surnames of all the partners, the note paper shall list their names. In other words, we're Barrett, McCarthy, and O'Sullivan. We're three partners. We should be listed as partners, not just because we're called Barrett, O'Sullivan, and McCarthy on the letterhead. We should be listed, our names should be listed as the partners. If the names of assistant solicitors or consultant solicitors are listed on the note paper, a differentiation should be made between their names and the names of the partners. You'll see this if you ever look at letterhead. On the top line is the partners listed, and underneath are assistant solicitors or consultant solicitors. If you're going to include legal executives and all that, you should make it clear. This is the legal executive, My point is, I want you to look at this slide, and I want you to actually go into the SI, which is, we're only looking at section 6. The rest of the SI, by the way, deals with things that I was speaking about earlier, about names and the naming of your firm and everything like that. So it's an important SI. It's the Solicitors' Practice, Conduct and Disciplinary Regulations 1996. And if you're commencing a firm, it applies to you. Where the practice comprises solicitor in salaried employment acting for his non-solicitor employer. Well, these are all the things. I just want to focus on the note paper basically for the moment, and to bring your attention to this and say, listen, this is an SI that you should be aware of. And if you're going to be submitting an application, read it so that your letterhead is correct. I'm also just going to mention, just in passing, obviously, these are the things that Liam Barrett from the Law Society requires to commence your firm. You will then, once you commence, have things, and this is not for today, but you'll have the reporting accountant's annual report. By the way, if you commence the firm, your accounting report date, i.e. the date of your actual account, where your accountant brings the figures up to date on that date and then submits a report on that basis, should be within 1 year of your commencement date. So if you commence on the 1st of January, the latest your financial year end date could be is the 31st of December. Now, if it is a case that you really need it to be, obviously if you want to be earlier than that, the 28th of September or whatever, that's fine. If you want it to be later than that for some reason, make that clear in your application, and we can have the financial regulation section, the accountants there, look at it, and they are sometimes say, okay, the first year will be a 13-month year or a 14-month year or whatever, and after that then, but I'm saying make it clear, because it should be within the first year. That's the requirement. If your firm is one of those firms that it's, which we get very boutique firms, I'm not actually holding client monies, then make that clear in your application. And you submit, you ask for, there is on the Law Society's website a statutory declaration, but you can contact me and say, look, also, by the way, we're not holding client monies. Can you send me this statutory declaration, and I will get it executed, and I will send it on to you, or my colleague will send it on to you. And then I'm just saying Phoenix firms and the succeeding practice rule, this really gets into cessations and changes the structure. So I'm not going to go, obviously you all are aware what a Phoenix firm is. You had a previous firm, you've just gone down the road and you've set up again. So you can't do that, because you just let all the liabilities, and you went into the runoff fund, and all your liabilities are covered and whatever, and then you, as I say, went down the road and you just started another practice. But just in terms of the succeeding practice rule, I'm just going to say very, very little, say this is really in cessations and changes of structure. But one of the things to keep in mind is, in terms of if you were in a previous practice and you're now commencing yourself, you have to be aware of the succeeding practice rule, because maybe you could be deemed a succeeding practice to the previous practice that you worked in or was a partner in or whatever. It's not really for today, but I just said I'd mention it in passing. And then these are basically, I'm going to go we're going back to Justin now. I think we're okay on time, Justin. You can let me know. Yep. But in terms of, there are a lot of resources, and Justin will speak more to this, but you will see, and in fact, in the notes on this, these are all hyperlinks, so you can go to the Law Society's website and review, for example, the guide to setting up in practice. Well, obviously, that's going to be your first port of call. Some of the common questions which are asked about setting up a firm, i.e. commencing in practice, whether it's a sole principal practice yourself or in partnership with another colleague or whatever. Well, I've spoken about the forms needed, the commencement in practice form, a confirmation of cover, PII cover from your broker, and the letterhead. Do I need a business plan? I don't need to see your business plan. Occasionally I get sent business plans. I don't want them. I don't need to see them, neither does the Law Society. That is between you and your PI broker and the bank and everybody else who's lending you any money. Justin may want to come in on that, but you should have a business plan.
I mean, it's not a requirement from the Law Society regulatory point of view, but anyone setting up a business, I would really strongly recommend that they do some sort of a business plan, just so that you can articulate what your goals and objectives and mission are, and understand a little bit around the finance, the sales and marketing, the operations, the staffing. So you sort of predict or try and understand better what some of the issues are within the business, identify what they are, and then plan to deal with them. I know the PII applications will require a business plan. We do have a business plan template on the website if anyone wants. It's on the Small Practice Hub, which is on the resources that we talked about earlier, if anyone needs to access it. But setting up a business without a business plan is a little bit like driving out in the M50 without a destination in mind. You'll definitely end up somewhere, but is it where you want to be? Unlikely. So And it allows you to sort of identify some of the mitigating factors and risks within the business, which would be identified maybe through a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, to just understand better what's going to happen in the future and what you need to prepare for. And maybe then from a sales and marketing point of view, just try to understand what your unique selling proposition is. What services are you going to sell? How are you going to price them? How are you going to market them, et cetera, et cetera. Now, this is not intended to be a start your own business course. But we'll cover that session later. But the only people really looking for a business plan are yourselves, the bank, potentially if you're going to be borrowing money, but for sure the PII, professional indemnity insurance, will require one. And just to follow up on what Liam was saying earlier around that, I know it's not his area, but there is a whole PII area on the website. Bill Holan is the chair of the PII committee. So they've done a lot of work on trying to make this easier to apply for, to get more insurers involved and help people in accessing that. There's also a helpline that's available, and I think we've included it in the slides or the resources. So if anyone has a question, also we'll take it on the chat. So sorry, Liam, I just
finished here, actually, Justin. Just one of the questions, common questions: how long does the process take? Once I receive a completed application, I made up of three documents at least, and everything is in order, and we can turn it around in 24 hours. So if you sent it in today and it's all in order and it was to commence today, you'll be told you commence today. Now, don't hold me to that. There are days when it takes a little longer, but normally, the other thing to just mention is you send it in and you say, I'm commencing on the 1st of May, and then you keep sending me emails, how's it going? How's it going? And I'm going, we won't do anything with it. It's in order, but we won't actually commence you until the 1st of May. So you won't be hearing back to me until at least the 1st of May.
So Liam, just to avoid any misunderstanding, like how, when the commencement commences, how is that? Do I get a letter? Do I get an email?
You get a letter. Well, now you get an email from me. Congratulations. Basically, though, what I'm saying is your new firm commenced at such and such a place under such and such a style and title, with such and such a firm number on such and such a date. The firm number is what you're going to be giving your broker to confirm, and I will explain that in the email, email to you. Give this to your broker, tell them to confirm PII cover against this new firm on the portal. They do it every day, O'Leary's, whichever is your brokers, Aracus, whoever. And of course, you need your own, and this is separate, but of course, I'm not investigating whether you have a PC. You better have a PC, but I'm assuming that you have, or you're going to apply now before you provide any. These are, the other matters.
When you say PC, you mean practicing certificate.
Practicing certificate. Yeah. These matters, but basically, sorry, I've kind of forgotten your question, but basically, it's a matter of getting in the correct application, and then we can commence the firm.
And there was a query there around, do you need to have practiced before setting up? And is there some
my understanding is under the solicitors regulations, I think it's the 1994 Act or 1994 regulations, the Amendment Act. My belief is that there was a sort of 3 years peak. There is in the regulation 3 years PQE. However, it's never been enforced. So basically, I don't want to say it's official, but basically, if you qualified from the Law Society, the next day you can open up, put your shingle up.
Yeah. However, my view on that is like that would not be necessarily a very good idea unless you've been running some other types of businesses. But it would be good to get some level of experience first before rushing out to open up your own practice, just to learn a little bit more around how it works. I would have thought it might be a little bit more.
But it makes sense.
Yeah, but there's no restriction other than what's stated in that act, but that doesn't seem to be being enforced at the moment.
If you just think of it on a practical level, I wonder what your PII broker would be thinking.
Yeah, well, we have heard in the any people who I've talked to before who haven't had don't have a trading or a track record history find it very difficult if they've just come out of law school to get coverage, and then the coverage that they get is kind of astronomical in its price. So it is possible to do any of these things, like it's possible to set up a business without a business plan, but not advised. So Liam, another question there was what could go wrong?
That's a very broad question.
Sure.
It's basically, of course, it's a pretty straightforward process. I'm going to say this from our point of view. just plan ahead. And that's what most people do. You're not opening up a solicitor firm just, as the thought on a Monday morning. You obviously have planned ahead. So what could go wrong? Sure, everything could go wrong, but usually it doesn't. It doesn't.
And this is where, going back to, without harping on about it, the business plan should be able to identify some of the risk factors in where you're not as prepared. I definitely.
Can I just say that though on that? I just want to make the point that's the business plan. That's a much broader thing from our point of view of commencing a firm. What can go wrong? Have the correct forms, make it clear, and submit it all together, please, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. And who will I contact if I had queries or?
Well, I'm going to say that if you are just a general query, go online. It's all online. If you are actually commencing a firm, I am commencing a firm, here is, please come back to me. I know I heard you speak online, or just, whatever. I will come back to you and I will email you directly, and then we'll start the process. Very good.
And all of the contact details are there, and we will share them later. It might be possible, Liam, to go back a slide and just talk a little bit, because I think you're finished with what you have to say, and just talk a little bit about some of the resources that are available. So these are all links, opening a practice. So there's very clear links to the commencement notice, to the things that you talked about there earlier, the practicing cert membership, the Law Society guide to setting up in practice. So there's an actual guide. I think it's a 40-page guide that's available for people to
it's
read
in hard
through.
Copy. You can PDF, you can download it, print it off,
maybe Liam, you could hover over that Law Society guide to setting up a practice and just go open the link. So double click on it and it should open up in our screen here. Again, the professional, just while that's opening, there's a professional indemnity insurance part to the website as well. We've talked about the helpline, and we've also run information sessions here previously.
Can you see that? Sorry, Justin.
Pardon?
Can you see the guide?
No, I can't see the guides. No. So we'd run previous sessions from O'Leary Insurances and Finance Ireland around applying. I think Bill Holan had also done one on what's involved in applying for PII. So it's a whole separate issue, not dealt with in this, but there are resources available to it. And then on the Practice Support Hub, there's further information around the business plan template, setting up. There are precedents there around hiring people, around what would be required for contracts, etc., health and safety, sales and marketing, the growth workbook. So there's a whole load of other stuff available there for people thinking of getting started. There's also a practice advisory service, not part of this session, and it's not related to regulatory. But again, there's help and support available there from a mentoring perspective. And obviously then we run these information sessions. So there's a whole library of information sessions covering a wide range of issues, from technology requirements, cybersecurity, sales and marketing, digitization, etc., etc. So there's plenty of stuff available for people who are getting started. So if anyone has any other questions for us, now is a great time to ask them. Do you have anything further to add, Liam?
I'm just going to stop sharing my screen, and if there's any
well, actually, could you just go back to the previous slide, Liam, if you don't mind?
Yeah.
So these are just the sessions that are upcoming. Next week, we're going to be talking to Sonia McEntee and Carl Byrne around practitioner experiences and some of the sort of practical issues that they would have experienced in starting up in practice. Learning more about mediation is on the 27th of April. And then we have a series of this Dignity Matters report that came out last year, which is kind of shocking. And so we put together a range of kind of supports around what the employer needs to know. Prevention is better than cure, and what to do once a complaint is issued or is raised. So these are sort of practical matters around how an employer or an employee might deal with some of these issues in the workplace. I think one of the surprising things of that report was that it's actually more prevalent than you would have thought in a lot of firms. So these are issues that would need to be addressed. And specifically, if you're starting up your own firm, you would need to have some thought around what your thoughts are, or what your policy is in relation to these matters. So unless anybody has any further matters, Liam, do you want to give a summary background or a summary update? Or
I'm just stopping the share there now.
Yeah.
As I say, all I want to say is if there's any questions from anybody that they had asked in the chat that I didn't cover, just let me know. Otherwise, I think that's the end of the session.
Yeah. So we'll just give it a second there if anyone wants to ask a question. If not, hopefully we'll see you all next week. We'll be joined by Carl and Sonia to discuss some of their practical experiences in setting up a practice. So Liam, nothing further to say. I don't think there's any chats coming through or queries coming through. So we'll leave it for today. Liam, thanks very much for joining us today. Thanks everyone for joining us. Hopefully we'll see you all next week. And Slán agus Gura Mágad.
Bye.
There's a query there on where will I find access. So I'll just put up a link there. You'll find them on the Small Practice Hub on the information sessions. So that'll give you a link as to the up and coming sessions. And we'll be sending out the recording later in the week with a link to the presentation and with a copy of the recording. So if anybody else has a query, we'll take it now. Otherwise, we'll close the session. So we'll take it as done. Slán agus Gura Mágad. Hopefully we'll see you next week. Thank you. Bye.